Part 24. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 231. Kneel down and apologize to you, Hong. You seem to have heard a joke. You should ask my prince if he agrees first. Chi Yun said coldly, you are committing a crime of insubordination, and you dare to involve the princess. Speaking of committing a crime of insubordination, Mr. Chi should reflect on himself first, Hong Yu said coldly. As a minister, staring at the princess is disrespectful. As a man, staring at a woman is rude. You offended the princess first, and you dare to complain first and blame her. I just admire the princess, Chi Yun said coldly. A gentleman likes a beautiful lady, but because the princess is so beautiful, I accidentally lost my mind and didn't mean to offend. He thought this sentence was a compliment to Chu Qinghuang's appearance, and most women would be delighted when they heard it, but he obviously misjudged Chu Qinghuang's temperament. After this sentence fell, the atmosphere suddenly became a little weird. A beautiful lady? A gentleman is looking for a good match. Let alone whether Her Royal Highness the Princess has anything to do with a graceful lady. The fact that Chi Yun dares to call himself a gentleman without any shame makes people laugh. Gentleman, Hong Yu sneered, how dare you flatter yourself? Chi Yun was furious. I am the legitimate son of the king of Zhenbei. Am I not more noble than you, a cheap thing who uses your beauty to serve others? A cheap thing? What can a gentleman endure? Hong Yu picked up the teacup in front of Qi Ling and threw it at him. Let you scold me? The teacup flew over with amazing force. Qi Yun was secretly shocked, and subconsciously wanted to dodge, but with a bang, severe pain came. The teacup hit his forehead directly, and the huge force made his forehead burst on the spot. The teacup fell to the ground and broke, and a stream of bright red blood flowed down his forehead, which was particularly shocking. Hong Yu stood up and ran to Chu Qinghuang. Your Highness, he actually scolded me. Chu Qinghuang's mouth twitched. Yu Qi Yun was dizzy from being hit, covering his forehead with one hand and pointing at Hong Yu with a trembling hand. Just wait. The princess's mansion has many people and he only brought 2 guards here today. If the situation gets out of hand, he will suffer. He wants to go to the palace to file a complaint. He must go to the palace to file a complaint. Dare to attack him? This little bitch must die. Qi Yun was supported by 2 guards and left the princess's mansion in a panic. Qi Ling, your brother doesn't seem to be very smart. Chen Zongjin turned his head to look at Qi Ling. He is far worse than you. I thought so too. Qi Ling nodded nonchalantly, his expression inevitably complicated. Hong Yu. What? Hong Yu looked at him fiercely. I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing this to protect His Highness. That toad actually dared to plot against His Highness. He has no self-awareness at all. Qi Ling laughed. Why are you so excited? I didn't say you were trying to help me. Hong Yu snorted coldly. Your Highness, we are in large numbers and we are not afraid of him. Hong Yu turned his head to look at Chu Qinghuang. Even if he reports it to the emperor, we firmly believe that he is the toad who wanted to eat swan meat first, and the emperor will not be confused about right and wrong. Fu Kang grabbed the hilt of the sword and stared coldly at someone who was getting closer and closer to Chu Qinghuang. I didn't say I was afraid of him. Chu Qinghuang's expression was subtle. You have a rich imagination. And there are many people? Ahem. Hong Yu cleared his throat. I just think that His Highness has so many servants, it would be a waste if he didn't favor them. You see, we have to go into battle at the critical moment. The silent and dumb Fu Kang next to him only draws his sword and kills people when he disagrees with them. It's good enough that he doesn't make things worse. What can His Highness expect from him? Who is Qi Yun? He is the only legitimate son of the king of Zhenbei, like a precious pimple. If he dies directly in the princess's mansion today, won't it be a big fuss? Unless the emperor intends to take back the military power and fiefdom title of the king of Zhenbei, he will have to give him an explanation. When the king of Zhenbei forces him down, whoever takes action will go out and die. What a brainless person. Chu Qinghuang tilted his head. Fu Kang. Yes. Did you hear that? Hong Yu dislikes you for being quiet and killing people when you disagree with them. Fu Kang pursed his lips. I know I'm wrong. He will try his best to restrain his subconscious actions in the future, put away the sword and dagger, and learn to hit people with a teacup. As for cursing, Fu Kang frowned and glanced at Hong Yu with some annoyance. Did he have to chatter like Hong Yu all day long? Your Highness, Hong Yu took the opportunity to compete for favor. There is no benefit in favoring one person alone. It is better to treat everyone equally. With more people, there is no need to be afraid of anyone. Chu Qinghuang paused. It rhymes. Hong Yu smiled awkwardly. Your Highness, don't you think about it? You mean, if I don't favor you, you might betray me and leave at any time. Hong Yu's face changed, and he quickly protested. How could I mean that? Your Highness. Shut up. Chu Qinghuang was annoyed by his noise and put down the teacup. You guys pack up and follow me into the palace later. After speaking, Chu Qinghuang raised his hand to Fu Kang. Fu Kang was restraining the urge to throw Hong Yu into the lake to feed the fish. Seeing his master handing him a hand, he was slightly stunned and stretched out his arm for his master to hold at any time. Chu Qinghuang stood up, supported Fu Kang's arm like an old Buddha, glanced at a few people slowly, and turned to leave. The 5 people who were thrown in the flower hall bowed and saw him off, and there was silence for a long time. After a while, Qi Ling said, Your Highness, do you only favor Fu Kang? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 232. Without my knowledge, this shameless guy actually took advantage of his proximity to grab the favor of His Highness. Hong Yu gritted his teeth, full of resentment. If I had known, I would have become a shadow guard. Xiao Yuer, don't talk nonsense. Qi Ling touched his head. You can't bear the hardship of being a shadow guard. Hong Yu was dissatisfied. Who said that? I said it, Qi Ling said. If you don't believe it, ask His Highness for permission another day and let Fu Kang take you to the Shadow Guard training camp to see it. I'm afraid you won't be able to eat for 3 days after you come back. Hong Yu was resentful. Your Highness won't really like Fu Kang, right? Wen Zhan frowned slightly, feeling that this fact was a bit depressing. Your Highness is not a talkative person, and Fu Kang is as cold as ice. He can't say a word for a long time. Your Highness is with him. I can't imagine what the picture would be like. Could it be like an ice sculpture against an ice sculpture, competing to see who is more taciturn? You can't imagine it, because you are not His Highness. Chu Ling Chuan said slowly. If you like someone, you will understand that nothing is born suitable. What His Highness likes is suitable for her, and what she doesn't like is useless even if everyone thinks it is a good match. Wen Zhan turned his head to look at him. Mr. Chu seems to understand this. Chu Ling Chuan smiled gently. It's just talk on paper. The others were thoughtful. Talk on paper? Yes, what the world thinks is suitable or unsuitable, suitable or unsuitable, isn't it also talk on paper? Emotions are like drinking water, you know it yourself. What you like is the best, and what you don't like is useless no matter how suitable it is. Fortunately, His Highness is of noble status. Even if he really likes him, it doesn't matter, Chu Ling Chuan said. Anyway, His Highness doesn't have to look at anyone's face and act. No one in this world is qualified to control who His Highness likes and who he wants. Hong Yu frowned. Are you saying this to me on purpose? No. Chu Ling Chuan imitated Qi Ling and raised his hand to rub his head. Don't pretend to be real. If you really like His Highness, it will be too late to end it, and you will be the only one hurt by love. Hong Yu raised his hand to wave away his presumptuous hand. Don't always touch me, I'm not a child. Chu Ling Chuan smiled and said nothing. Okay. Qi Ling flicked his robe sleeves and turned to walk out. Everyone go and pack up. Pay attention to the rules when you enter the palace later. Don't make a fuss and make people laugh. Quiet all the way. Chu Qinghuang tilted his head to look at Fu Kang. What are you thinking about? Fu Kang came back to his senses, glanced at Chu Qinghuang silently, and then lowered his head. Master, do you think your subordinates are boring? Boring? No, Chu Qinghuang said in a light tone, I think you are quite interesting. Fu Kang was slightly surprised, then lowered his head and said oh, his eyebrows and eyes became visibly soft. Although he had no idea what was interesting about him, the master must be perfunctory to him, but even if it was perfunctory, he liked it. When the two returned to their room to change clothes, the decree from the palace arrived. Your Highness, the Princess Chenhai personally brought people to convey the order. The Emperor asked you to go to the palace with those servants. Do you think it is convenient for them now? Convenient, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. How did the Zhenbei king and his son complain? Mr. Qi said that a servant in red took advantage of the indulgence of your Highness, the princess, and beat him for no reason. Your Highness must give him an explanation for this matter. Explanation? Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows were cold. I will give him an explanation soon. After speaking, she turned and walked out. Is the carriage ready? It's ready. Enter the palace. There were still two carriages. Chu Qinghuang and Fu Kang sat in the first one, and the 5 people behind them took one. The group drove to the palace. Seeing this situation in front of him, Chen Hai silently lit 3 incense sticks for the Zhenbei king and his son. The carriage soon arrived at the palace gate. Her Highness, the princess, got off the car and walked towards the Yogan palace with several servants in her backyard. The guards on duty on the palace road bowed their heads and saluted. Their expressions showed no strangeness, but they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts that the princes in the backyard of Her Royal Highness the Princess were all so handsome. No wonder the princess could force them into the palace regardless of the secular world. In ancient times, many kings and nobles spent a lot of money to compete for beauties, and even went to war. It was rare to see a royal princess parading through the city with her male favorites. The atmosphere in Yogan Palace was depressing, and there was a sense of impending storm. With the announcement of Her Royal Highness the Princess has arrived, the King of Zhenbei and several other ministers in the palace turned their heads and looked over. Chu Qinghuang walked steadily, followed by Fu Kang in black. The King of Zhenbei was about to speak when he saw Qi Ling in white followed by the boy in red, Wen Zhan in blue, Shen Zongjin in a lake green robe, and Chu Ling Chuan in a moon-white brocade robe with bamboo embroidery at the end. Each one was more handsome than the other, more outstanding than the other, making people dazzled. The Yogan Palace was completely silent. Not only was the King of Zhenbei's face stiff and speechless, but the other ministers were also shocked speechless. The eldest princess, she actually dared to be so absurd, bringing these concubines who were not presentable in front of the emperor. Is this still reasonable? Is it reasonable? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 233. Chu Qinghuang walked into the hall and saw Qi Yun kneeling on the ground. In order to have a better effect on the petition, he didn't even have time to bandage the wound on his forehead. Apart from the blood stains, there was a large piece of blood on his forehead. It was badly bruised and swollen, and it looked really miserable. Turning his eyes slightly, Chu Qinghuang saw several familiar ministers, all of whom were old acquaintances. Zhongjin's father Shen Yushi, Wen Zhan's father Wen Xingyun, Qi Ling's father Zhenbei Wang. Well, these 3 can barely be regarded as Chu Qinghuang's father-in-law. It's just that no one here would dare to regard Chu Qinghuang as their daughter-in-law. After all, the status of a prince-in-law and a male favorite are very different. One is a serious royal prince-in-law, and the other is a lowly person who can be disposed of at will. Thing. Who would really take the so-called Shijun seriously? Chu Qinghuang didn't care about the strange looks in the eyes of several ministers, walked up to the case, and said calmly, "Father, the emperor summoned his ministers, is it about the legitimate son of Zhenbei King?" The 5 people behind them stood obediently. They would never move if Her Royal Highness the Princess asked them to move, and they would definitely not talk nonsense if Her Royal Highness the Princess asked them to speak. "Qinghuang," Qiyun said, "that he was beaten in your eldest princess's mansion." The emperor's eyes fell on the men behind him, and he quickly looked at Hong Yu, "And it was the boy in red who beat him. What do you want to say about this?" The emperor was quite impressed by the young man in red. After all, besides being the youngest and pretty, Hong Yu had a deep and profound affection for Qinghuang, which was touching. When Qiyun complained to the emperor that the person who beat him was a young man in red, the emperor already guessed who it was. Even when he sent someone to invite Qinghuang into the palace, he was still thinking about what to do. While ensuring that King Zhenbei is appeased, the punishment for the young man can be minimized. After all, Hong Yu seems to be still young, and his frail body may not be able to withstand a few beatings with a paddle. "My son, I have nothing to say," Chu Qinghuang said indifferently, obviously not taking this little matter to heart. "It is true that Qiyun was beaten, but my son thinks this is just a harmless dispute." "A harmless dispute," King Zhenbei said in a displeased tone. "Her Royal Highness, the eldest princess, spoke so lightly to protect the people in her palace. Is it possible that the injury on Qiyun's forehead is fake?" Chu Qinghuang turned to look at him with cold eyes. "Is King Zhenbei questioning my words?" It was clear that he had a cold and lazy expression just now, but now he was so cold that there was no emotion at all, and his otherworldly and beautiful face was covered with a layer of frost, which made people feel heart palpitating. King Zhenbei was secretly shocked, almost unable to believe that such an aura appeared on a 15-year-old girl. His face darkened. "I dare not question the eldest princess, but the injury on Qiyun's head is obvious to all. If the injury was caused by the eldest princess, I won't say anything if it is reasonable or not. But if a servant below commits such a crime, is it possible? Shouldn't he be severely punished?" "Your Majesty, I have something to say." Hong Yu raised his hand like a good baby. "I can defend myself." The emperor rebuked majestically, "There are no rules. Young Master Qi is treasonous and disrespectful to Her Royal Highness the eldest princess. He also spoke arrogant words. I couldn't hold back for a moment before I took action." Hong Yu frowned and said aggrievedly, "And I just picked up the teacup on the table. I didn't think it could really hit him." Who knew that Mr. Qi's reaction was so slow that he didn't even know how to hide, which made people wonder if he was deliberately trying to frame me with a cruel trick. "You are talking nonsense." Qiyun raised his head and roared, "I have never offended the eldest princess at all." Kurha insisted, "You just took offense." "I fell in love with the eldest princess at first sight." "Presumptuous," King Zhenbei roared, "what nonsense are you talking about?" Qiyun's expression changed, and what he didn't finish was blocked back. He moved his mouth. "My son just likes Her Royal Highness the eldest princess. Isn't this a big mistake? He actually..." "You are staring at His Highness with both eyes, and there is no rule at all," Hong Yu said coldly. "If His Highness really cares about you, not giving you 100 lashes would be a mercy." The emperor coughed lightly. "Although according to King Huang's past temper, this is indeed true, but, Hong Yu, is it really okay for your highness to say this? To put it mildly, Qing Huang has not been so cruel recently. It's such nonsense, it's a slap in the face." King Zhenbei's face was gloomy. He really saw what it means to be eloquent. "It's a fact that you committed the following crimes, and it's also a fact that you beat the son of a prince. According to the law, you should be punished with a cane starting at 50. Even if it's true. Your rhetoric to justify your actions cannot offset the fact that you committed the crime." After finishing his words, he knelt down and said, "I beg the emperor to make the decision for me and for Yunur." After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 234. The emperor frowned, feeling unhappy. What does the king of Zhenbei mean? Forcing him to punish Hongyu? Ahem. Minister Wen spoke up to break the silence. I think the king of Zhenbei doesn't need to take the matter so seriously. In fact, it's just a dispute caused by jealousy. It's not a matter of insubordination. This young man in red is young and ignorant. He was probably unhappy when he saw Mr. Qi offending the princess, so he acted impulsively. Maybe he didn't know Mr. Qi's identity at all. This is normal. The king of Zhenbei raised his eyes coldly. Minister Wen means that Qi Yun deserves to be beaten. If the king of Zhenbei really wants to be serious, I can accompany you. Chu Qinghuang said coldly. Qi Yun offended me for the matter of the palace. Let him be beaten with 50 boards first, and then it won't be too late to charge Hongyu with assaulting him. Seventh sister Chu Tianyan frowned, obviously very dissatisfied with this. Doctors should not be punished. The king of Zhenbei has made great contributions to the protection of Ziki. He is the pillar of the country and the pillar of Mianbei. How can you dash? Third brother probably forgot the fact that he killed the daughter of the king of Zhenbei with his own hands. Chu Qinghuang turned his head to look at him calmly, and his black pupils seemed to be wrapped in a biting frost. Even if the people in my palace want to punish, I will do it myself, and it is not the turn of others to point fingers. Chu Tianyan's expression froze instantly, and he clenched his hands tightly. Zhenbei Wang really wants my servant to be punished. Chu Qinghuang's eyes turned slightly. I have no objection. First, take Qi Yun out and give him 50 strokes of the cane. I will leave Hongyu to you. I will not ask whether he lives or dies. What do you think? Zhenbei Wang said angrily. Your Highness, the princess, is forcing me with your status dash. I am acting according to the rules and laws. Chu Qinghuang interrupted him. It is a fact that Qi Yun offended me. Does Zhenbei Wang want to ignore this? I did not offend the princess, Qi Yun denied. I just looked at the princess twice more. The ministers present had subtle expressions. Is the son of Zhenbei Wang so stupid? Looking at the princess twice more? Not to mention the princess, even looking at other women twice more is a rude act, not to mention staring at the princess without permission. How rude it is, not to mention the princess's temper. Even if it was any concubine in the harem, it would not be too much to drag her out and beat her to death immediately. Of course, the son of the king of Zhenbei could not really be beaten to death, but such behavior was indeed inappropriate. I am beautiful. Chu Qinghuang looked at him calmly. Qi Yun nodded. Her Royal Highness the princess is beautiful and has the appearance of an immortal. I fell in love with her at first sight and could not help myself. As soon as the voice fell, it immediately attracted 5 pairs of hostile eyes. Your Majesty. Qi Yun turned his head to look at the emperor and kowtowed suddenly. I want to marry Her Royal Highness the princess. Please grant it? After I marry Her Royal Highness, I will take extra care of the princess. I will love her in this life and will never let her down. Please grant it? The Yugan palace was as quiet as snow. The king of Zhenbei also fell silent. He wanted to know the emperor's attitude. If Qi Yun could really marry the princess, then ask to marry the princess. A cold sneer sounded, and Hongyu looked down at her slender and beautiful fingers. Didn't you look in the mirror before coming here to see what kind of virtue you have? Shen Zongjin muttered, maybe he didn't, otherwise he wouldn't be so ignorant of himself. This sentence directly aroused the intimidation of his father Shen Yushi's eyes, but Shen Zongjin lowered his head and didn't see it, and it didn't matter if he saw it. Her Highness the Princess is the 9 heavens mysterious woman who came to the world. How can ordinary people dream of it? Wen Zhan sighed. Why are there so many people who don't know themselves? Minister Wen couldn't help but turn his head and stare at him. Qi Ling is the servant of Her Highness the Princess, and Qi Yun wants to marry Her Highness the Princess. Chu Ling Chuan spoke slowly. Could it be that the Qi family wants brothers to share a wife? As soon as this was said, the face of the king of Genbei suddenly sank. The emperor listened to the whispering discussion of several people openly and honestly, and he simply didn't know how to react. Although there were many corrupt officials in the court, the ministers formed cliques for personal gain, and the princes were also eyeing his throne. At least no one dared to be presumptuous in front of the king of a country. These people in King Huang's backyard openly ridiculed and mocked the prince's legitimate son in the Yugan palace in front of the emperor and several important ministers. It's so bold and disrespectful. The emperor felt tired and didn't know how to express his attitude for a while. In terms of reason, let alone Qing Huang is now his intimate little cotton-padded jacket, he also has a good impression of these outstanding men in her backyard, so naturally he doesn't want to punish them. But it is also a fact that the legitimate son of the Genbei king was beaten. If he doesn't express his attitude, it seems unreasonable. Your Majesty, I think this matter is actually easy to handle. Censor Shen said, let's put it one way and one way. The servant in the backyard of Her Royal Highness the Princess made a mistake, and Her Royal Highness the Princess should deal with it. However, in order to show fairness, the princess can punish her servant in front of the king of Genbei, and the degree of punishment can satisfy Mr. Qi. As for Mr. Qi, the person he offended was the princess, and it should be the princess's decision, and the degree of punishment can satisfy the princess. What do you think? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 235. The king of Genbei was so angry that he just talked nonsense. Why compare his son with a servant? Even if Qi Yun did have some offensive behavior, it was harmless, but that lowly servant smashed Qi Yun's head with a teacup, and he deserved to die. Shen Iking is a good idea. The emperor nodded. Qing Huang, what do you think? Chu Qing Huang nodded slowly. I have no objection, I can follow Master Shen's method. Father Chu Tianyan frowned. How can a servant of the king be punished at the same time as the legitimate son of a prince? I think dash. You don't need to think about it. The emperor waved his hand, not intending to listen to his thoughts at all. What does King Genbei think? Chu Tianyan's expression was stiff, and a gloomy look flashed across his eyes. Just as King Genbei was about to speak, Qi Yun had already spoken. I am willing to be punished for offending the eldest princess, but after the punishment, please ask the emperor to marry the eldest princess to me. The emperor's face darkened. Qi Yun Chu Qing Huang turned to look at him with cold and distant eyes. It's not impossible for you to marry me, as long as you can meet the 3 requirements I put forward. When Qi Yun heard that there was something going on, he hurriedly said, Your Highness, Princess, please speak frankly. As long as I can marry your Highness, I will die without mercy. Chu Qing Huang said calmly, everyone knows that I am violent and like to whip people. If you can stay in the eldest princess's mansion for half a month and let me whip 100 whips every day, you will have fulfilled the first requirement. 100 whips? King Genbei's expression suddenly changed. The second request is that there are 5 servants in my palace. I don't have any requirements on appearance, because any one of them is enough to crush you. It would be difficult for me to ask you to compare your appearance with them. Chu Qing Huang's tone was calm. As long as you can surpass Ji Ling in martial arts, surpass Wen Zhan in knowledge, surpass Hong Yu in piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and surpass Zhong Jin in arithmetic, you will have met my second requirement. Standard. After these words fell, the silence in Yuqian Palace was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Several ministers were strangely silent. His Majesty the Emperor said nothing. His mood suddenly improved a lot, and he even had the time to pick up the teacup and take a sip. King Genbei frowned and said coldly, Your Highness, Princess, isn't this forcing others to do something difficult? 100 whips a day for half a month, how can Qi Yun survive? Whether he can surpass Ji Ling in martial arts and Wen Zhan in knowledge are secondary matters. The first requirement alone is simply impossible to achieve. 100 whips? She really speaks her mind. Since you can't do it, don't talk shamelessly here. Chu King Huang's eyebrows were cold, and his pair of dark pupils were filled with a cold and ruthless luster. How dare a mere playboy dare to think of me? Who gave you the courage? Your Highness, the eldest princess King Zhenbei said in a deep tone, marriage is an important matter ordered by the parents and the matchmaker. As the princess is an emperor's daughter, the emperor should make the decision on marriage. The emperor has not yet spoken, so is it appropriate for the eldest princess to be so tough? Chu Qinghuang said coldly, the king is noble and his ministers are humble. Even if King Zhenbei is named a prince, he is still a minister of the royal family. Is it appropriate to question me so forcefully in front of my father and other ministers? King Zhenbei choked and couldn't say a word for a moment. Okay, the emperor frowned and announced that the matter was over. There is no need to argue anymore. Since today's matter was caused by jealousy, I thought there was no need to be serious and we all took a step back. Qing Huang went back to manage the inner house well. Don't if you let these servants be too arrogant. As for Qi Yun, if you are injured, please bandage it properly and don't leave any scars carelessly. In any case, it is impossible for the king of Zhenbei to agree to let his son be at King Huang's disposal. In this case, we can only take a step back. Qi Yun was unwilling to give in. Then, Your Royal Highness the Princess. I still need to consider the matter of marriage. The emperor interrupted him, please kneel down. King Zhenbei lowered his eyes to hide the anger in his eyes. What the third prince said was indeed true. The emperor doted on Chu Qinghuang to the point where he could not distinguish between right and wrong. Chu Qinghuang made a mess in the court, and the atmosphere was completely ruined. A royal princess raised an upright and doted son. It was simply thrown into the face of the royal family. Such an emperor has no qualifications to sit on the throne anymore. Your Majesty, King Zhenbei said in a deep voice, Qi Ling is my son. I haven't seen him for many days. I have something to say to him. I hope that your Majesty will allow Chen and his son to spend half a day alone. The emperor was about to agree when he suddenly thought of something and looked at Qing Huang. Qing Huang, what do you think? I'm afraid it won't work. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, my son was recuperating in the mansion due to poisoning a few days ago. In the military camp, Qi Ling is helping him supervise the training. There is no room for delay in important matters in the military camp. Qi Yun's expression changed slightly, and he suddenly blurted out, a humble concubine, a servant of the eldest princess's palace, can actually enter and leave the military camp at will. As soon as the words fell, the air condensed. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 236. Qi Yun, the emperor's face darkened, and his good temper finally ran out. Are you questioning the eldest princess's actions? Qi Yun's face turned pale. I don't dare. Your Majesty, forgive me. King Zhenbei apologized quickly. Qi Yun was outspoken and did not mean to offend the eldest princess. Please be aware of this, Your Majesty. The eldest brother is not questioning the eldest princess, but thinks that I am of low status and not qualified to enter the military camp. Qi Ling said calmly, but this may be a misunderstanding by the eldest brother. After the eldest princess was poisoned, she rested in the mansion for several days. Your Highness will go on patrol to see if the Silver Armor Army is slacking off during their routine drills. They haven't done anything they shouldn't have done, and they won't rely on His Highness's influence to form gangs in the military camp and do whatever they want. Brother, don't do too much. Concern. Speaking of Qi Ling, I have a request. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyes slightly and looked at the emperor sitting behind the case. Qi Ling is good at martial arts and is quite proficient in riding and archery sword formations. I think he had a lot of them at home before. After working hard, I firmly believe that my talents cannot be wasted. I want Qi Ling to serve as the temporary Left General of the Silver Armor Army, and I hope that my father will give me permission. What? Everyone was shocked. Let the Prince of Zhenbei's concubine and the eldest princess male favorite be General Zhou? Absolutely ridiculous. Chu Tianyan was the first to object. Father, this is absolutely impossible. I remember that on the last birthday of the Queen Mother, the third emperor went crazy for no reason at the family banquet. My father ordered you to stay in the mansion and think about your mistakes behind closed doors. You are not allowed to go out without permission. Chu Qinghuang looked at Chu Tianyan coldly. 3 emperors is the emperor's appearance here today a blatant rebellion? Chu Tianyan's face turned pale and he looked at the emperor anxiously. Father, are there any sons or ministers? It's true that I didn't summon you. The emperor frowned and looked at him displeased. Go back to your prince's palace and don't enter the palace again for the next 2 days. Chu Tianyan's expression froze, and his face suddenly turned blue and white. He hated Chu Qinghuang in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face at all, and he only clenched his hands tightly. Chu Qinghuang, just wait for me. I want to see how long you can be arrogant. I take my leave. He bowed stiffly, took a few steps back stiffly, turned around stiffly, opened the door and walked out. Chu Tianyan left slumped like a defeated rooster. Seeing this, the other ministers silently swallowed back what they wanted to say. The third prince is no match for Her Royal Highness the eldest princess. What else can these ministers say? Qi Ling, the emperor's eyes fell on the 5 attendants behind Chu Qinghuang, and finally looked at Qi Ling, stepped forward. Qi Ling, dressed in white, came out, bowed and said, "Young man Qi Ling, please see the emperor." The emperor frowned. Although Qi Ling was a concubine, one of the 2 sons of King Zhenbei called himself a Chen and the other a little man in front of him. The difference was really huge. Are you good at riding and shooting? Qi Ling said in a humble tone, reporting to your majesty, I know a thing or two, but I dare not say that I am good at it. Rather humble. The emperor had a better impression of him and asked calmly, how does it compare with your brother? This. Qi Yun's expression changed slightly. Reporting to your majesty, Qi Yun is a legitimate son. I have carefully taught him martial arts and military skills, just so that he can better protect his family and country and be loyal to the emperor in the future. King Zhenbei said, following the trend, Qi Ling is a bastard, and he is more capable than Qi Yun is slightly inferior. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, if my father wants to know the difference between the 2 of them, how about letting the 2 brothers compete? King Zhenbei's expression changed slightly. Have a test? Qi Yun felt guilty and couldn't help but look troubled. I'm not feeling well today. Hong Yu just accidentally hit you on the head, it shouldn't affect your hands and feet. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, is it possible that Mr. Qi doesn't dare to compete? Qi Yun gritted his teeth and said, Her Royal Highness the Princess is joking. Then let's compete. Chu Qinghuang's tone was strong and there was no room for him to shirk. Compete outside. If you feel that the place is not big enough and you can't use your skills, you can borrow the training ground where the Imperial Army trains. Qi Yun's face gradually stiffened. Qi Ling. Chu Qinghuang's eyes fell on Qi Ling's face. If you dare to disgrace me, I will reward you with 100 whips when you go back tonight. Qi Ling lowered his head, yes. King Zhenbei frowned, Your Highness, the eldest princess, are you deliberately making things difficult for him? Who is embarrassing? Chu Qinghuang said calmly, Qi Ling is a member of my palace. If he loses, it will be my palace's face. If I embarrass him, he is embarrassing himself. King Zhenbei does not have to do it for his sake. The palace is worried. King Zhenbei's face darkened slightly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. How dare this young girl dare to deliberately go against him? If Qi Yun is unwilling to compete with Qi Ling and just admits defeat, I can accept it. Chu Qinghuang said, he is just a man who lost without fighting. I don't think he is qualified to succeed to the title of prince and military power. Border past the city bears the important responsibility of protecting the country, and the power cannot fall on an incompetent idiot. As soon as these words came out, the king of Genbei was completely angered. Chi-yun is the legitimate son of the minister. He has studied martial arts and military techniques carefully and practiced hard for several years. Moreover, the father and son of the minister are loyal to the emperor and have never had any different intentions. Please, your royal highness, please be careful. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 237. Be careful what you say, you will know after the competition. Under Chu King Huang's insistence that he could not refuse, Chi-yun could no longer shirk, so he had no choice but to get up and walk out, and start a less formal duel with Chi Ling. Since there is a competition, it is natural that there must be a fair judgment by someone with high status. So the emperor and the ministers went out together to witness the brothers' military contest. When he walked to the open space outside Yukian Palace and stood there, Chi Ling had a calm expression and a calm demeanor, looking confident. Chi Yun's expression was tense, and his eyes were fixed on Chi Ling, with warning and threat in his eyes. You are not allowed to use sharp weapons without permission in front of the king. So soon someone from the palace brought two bamboo swords, which were exactly the same length and size. No one took advantage of the other. Chu Qing Huang stood aside with his hands behind his hands, his eyebrows cold and distant, and he stared expressionlessly at the two people who were about to face off not far away. A tense and depressing atmosphere brewed for a while. A young man whispered behind him, "I guess someone is going to make a joke soon." "What do you say?" Wen Zhan turned his head and looked at Hong Yu. Hong Yu said, "Not much." Wen Zhan. The emperor turned his head and looked at the people behind Chu Qing Huang. The more he looked, the more he felt that these servants were so handsome, and they didn't have the rosy aura of the servants. It comes out with a clean temperament. King Huang's vision was indeed impeccable and perfect. Watch the move. Chi Yun slashed at Chi Ling with his bamboo sword without warning. He shouted coldly and instantly drew the emperor's attention back. Several officials present were all civil servants, and the emperor had only practiced for a few days in his youth to strengthen his body, and was not proficient in martial arts. But at this time, just looking at the postures of the two people, he already had a rough judgment in his mind. As expected, Chi Ling, who was calm and composed, suddenly raised his hand to fight back when Chi Yun was about to hit the door. His movements were very fast, as if he took action in just an instant, and then heard a sound. Chi Yun's mouth went numb, and the bamboo sword in his hand was shaken and flew out. With a clang, the sound of the bamboo sword hitting the ground was particularly clear. Time seemed to suddenly stop at this moment. Chi Yun's face suddenly turned white and blue, wonderfully. King Genbei's face was covered with frost. The emperor frowned, obviously not expecting the legitimate son of the Qi family to be so vulnerable. Is this what King Genbei meant by carefully teaching him martial arts and military skills? Didn't King Genbei say that Qi Yun's martial arts and military tactics were taught by you personally and were much better than Chi Ling? Chu Qing Huang turned to look at King Genbei, her eyebrows were cold and her voice was bone-chilling. Every move can be. His weapons were shot down before he could pass by. How can he be expected to protect his family and his country? Isn't it possible that the enemy invaded the imperial city and Mr. Qi was still awake? A look of embarrassment flashed across King Genbei's face, and he was about to explain when he heard Hong Yu say, "Isn't this considered bullying the king?" As he finished speaking, there seemed to be a cold current passing through the air. With the label of deceiving the emperor being slapped on, the faces of Genbei Prince and his son both changed, and they knelt down subconsciously. "Your Majesty is aware of this," King Genbei said. "Chi Yun is really unwell today." "I dare not fool your Majesty. I have heard that the concubine of the king of Genbei is superior to his legitimate son in martial arts and military skills. Unfortunately, he was born as a concubine and has a low status in the family." he is suppressed by his legitimate son everywhere. Even entering the backyard of this palace was caused by someone's plot. Qing Huang looked at his father and son with cold eyes. After hearing these words, Qi Yun's face turned pale. Qi Yun has admitted today that his skills are inferior to others. I can ask my father to give him a lighter sentence for deceiving the king. Otherwise, just choose a time to compete again some other time. If we lose again, then, I'm afraid Zhenbei king will not be able to justify it. The legitimate son suppresses the concubine? The emperor's face darkened, and his voice was majestic and full of dissatisfaction. Although there are differences between concubines, and one should not mess around with superiority or inferiority, a general always serves others with his ability. Especially the king of Zhenbei is responsible for guarding Mianbei, so he should pay more attention to his ability. King Zhenbei's expression suddenly changed, and his heart felt like ice. I know the crime. The emperor looked at the father and son, his mind spinning 1,000 times, and after a moment, he said coldly, since the king of Zhenbei is here, I won't go back for the time being. I need to summon the military generals in the court to deal with the troops in the Mianbei fiefdom. Some adjustments. King Zhenbei's heart sank. Your Majesty. Qi Yun cannot be reused. There is no need to inherit the title of prince in the future. The emperor flicked his sleeves, turned and walked into Yuqian Palace. Qing Huang and I come in, and the others leave. It was like a basin of ice water was poured down on Qi Yun, giving him a bone-chilling chill. Qi Ling, Hong Yu, you guys are waiting for me outside. Qing Huang said coldly, no one is allowed to leave without my permission, otherwise I will skin you. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 238. Zhenbei Wang knelt on the ground for a long time before slowly standing up, his face gloomy. Obviously he was extremely angry. He looked up at Qi Ling, his eyes were gloomy and full of disgust, just like the eyes that had not changed for more than 10 years, which Qi Ling was familiar with and could face calmly. Father, don't look at me like this. Qi Ling smiled faintly. Father and elder brother came to file the complaint together. It was father who committed the deception of the emperor. As the son of a king, he has no ability to rely on himself. It is elder brother who is a fool and incompetent. Even if father uses his eyes to expose me, it can't change these facts. That's right. Hong Yu raised his hand and scratched his head. As the son of a general, if you get beaten, you can get it back. If you have the ability, you can get it back yourself. It's not like a man to file a complaint like a child. There is no grace at all. Now it's good, the complaint failed and even the title of king can't be inherited. It's what I deserve. Wen Zhan coughed lightly. Recently, Her Royal Highness the Princess seems to be blessed by the gods. All those who go against the princess have no good end. The lessons of the past are vivid in our minds, but some people are ignorant of life and death and insist on being stupid. Tisk, there is no excuse for people to sympathize with them. The ministers standing by were shocked when they heard this. That's right. Since Her Royal Highness the Princess divorced Feng Jinzi, it was like a blessing from heaven that enveloped her in the halo of the gods. Anyone who offended her would die, and those who followed her would live smoothly and be extremely comfortable. Several people thought to themselves that they had to follow the princess in the future. They would rather offend the emperor than offend Qing Huang, otherwise they would die without knowing how. Shen Kongjin turned around and looked at Hong Yu and the others. Her Royal Highness's birthday is coming soon. Have you prepared gifts for her? Birthday? Hong Yu slapped his head, as if he suddenly remembered. I forgot about it completely. Look at my brain. I've been busy competing for favor recently and ignored the most important things. There are still a few days. You can think about it after you go back. Wen Zhan said leisurely. I think the best gift I can give to your highness is to get the first place in the autumn examination. Her Royal Highness's birthday? Minister Wen and Censor Shen looked at each other, and as they turned around and left, they were thinking about this matter in their hearts. Their sons are all serving in the Royal Highness's mansion, so they shouldn't need to worry about this matter. Wen Zhan and Shen Kongjin should serve Her Royal Highness well. However, as the two looked at each other, a frightening thought emerged in their hearts. Chu Qinghuang's words to Qi Yun just now came to his mind word by word: as long as you can beat Qi Ling in martial arts, Wen Zhan in knowledge, Hong Yu in chess, calligraphy and painting, and Shen Zongjin in arithmetic. So, the princess' backyard is really full of hidden talents. Minister Wen thought of the conditions that Chu Qinghuang had discussed with him. Wen Zhan wanted to take the imperial examination to enter the government, and now Qi Ling was arranged to be in the military camp to take charge of the Silver Armor Army, and she herself had 3,000 imperial guards in her hands. What is the princess trying to do? He thought a little uneasily. The princess would not have someone to support, and the layout she is making now seems to be to support someone to take the throne. Wen Xingyun was originally an official who supported concubine Duan and the fifth prince. He thought Chu Qinghuang should naturally support his mother and the fifth prince. However, since Chu Qinghuang personally led people to raid the Ling family, Wen Xingyun could not understand her actions. He could only act more cautiously in the court and dared not approach the eldest princess easily, for fear that she would catch him and put him to death one day. If it were not for the fact that the emperor summoned her 5 servants to the palace today, and his son was one of the 5 servants, he would still stay away from Chu Qinghuang, avoid her if possible, and never take the initiative to approach her to provoke her. Look at the father and son of the Zhenbei king, aren't they ready-made examples? Originally, Chu Tianyin killed his own concubine Qi, and the emperor felt a little guilty about them, but now this guilt has been made by them, and they have also caused the emperor's dissatisfaction for no reason. Even the hereditary title of king and marquis can't be kept. It's hard to say whether Qi Yun can leave the imperial city safely. Qi Ling, the king of Zhenbei, spoke coldly. His tone was firm and unyielding. Take time to go to the general's mansion tomorrow, your father has something to tell you. I'm afraid that's not possible. Hong Yu shook his head. The rules of the princess mansion are strict, and His Highness must not allow him to go. If he dares to meet outsiders at will, His Highness will break his legs. Qi Ling was somewhat helpless. Father heard it, I have to ask His Highness for permission first. His Highness will not agree, Wen Zhan said indifferently. Her Highness the princess is in a bad mood today, and she will not be in a good mood for the next 3 days. If you dare to provoke His Highness, be careful that His Highness will strip you of your clothes, tie you to a tree and whip you. Shen Zongjin said, maybe the whip has to be dipped in salt water. Maybe a whip with barbs will be used, and a whip will leave a blood mark, deep enough to see the bone, Hong Yu said, and couldn't help shuddering. It hurts to think about it. Qi Ling turned his head and frowned. Shut up. The king of Zhenbei's face was ashen, and he left coldly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 239. Chen Hai led everyone in the palace to retreat. There were only the emperor and Chu Qinghuang, father and daughter, in Yuqian Palace. Qinghuang, His Majesty the Emperor, sat behind the royal desk and looked up at his daughter, with a dark color in his eyes. Did King Zhenbei do something he shouldn't have done? Chu Qinghuang said, why would my father ask this? With your temper, if it was just Qi Yun who offended, you shouldn't embarrass them on the spot. The emperor held a teacup in his hand and his tone was calm, but full of deep thoughts that an emperor should have. King Zhenbei is a vassal king who guards one side after all. The vassal king who was guarding one side already had great power. In addition to having 200,000 troops and horses in hand, he also had the advantage of being as high as the sky and far away from the emperor. It was difficult for the court to get the news of what he wanted to do in the first time. In the past, even the emperors were mostly polite to these feudal kings, and would never embarrass them in public unless they made any principled mistakes. Chu Qinghuang asked slowly, what if King Zhenbei has already had a different intention? The emperor's expression changed slightly. What did you say? Chu Qinghuang's expression was very calm, and there was no sign of any unusual fluctuations. A few days ago, my son was poisoned in Prince Qian's mansion. The murderer was Feng Wanyu, the legitimate daughter of the Feng family, and the poisoner was Axiang, the maid of Prince Qian's mansion. But this incident, one of the most crucial characters, has not yet surfaced. The emperor frowned. Who? Chu Qinghuang said, Adai next to brother three emperors. Adai. The emperor felt that the name sounded familiar, and thought about it for a moment. The time when Yi Ling lured a poisonous snake to kill you on the mountain in the suburbs, it seems that this Adai gave her the medicine. Chu Qinghuang nodded, yes. The emperor's face changed slightly, and his expression suddenly darkened. Is she the one who got in the way of Feng Wanyu's poisoning this time? She was the one who came up with the idea, and she was the one who gave me the poison of the heartbroken grass, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. Even when we were tracking down the murderer with the Forbidden Army in Dali Temple, it was Adai who arranged for his confidant to betray Feng Wanyu. Adai betrayed Feng Wanyu? The emperor obviously did not expect to hear such a thing. He was slightly startled, and then asked in confusion, why did she betray Feng Wanyu? Adai is a person of the Queen Mother and a confidant arranged by the Queen Mother for Chu Tianyan, while Feng Xiang is Chu Tianyan's uncle. In terms of public and private matters, as well as emotion and reason, Adai has no reason to betray Feng Wanyu. Could it be that he also learned from Chu Qinghuang to kill relatives in a righteous way? Chu Qinghuang quickly explained his doubts. Feng Xiang is the uncle of the third emperor brother, but this time something happened to the Feng family. Has father seen the third emperor brother coming to plead for mercy? The emperor's eyebrows were deep. No. Many officials from the Feng family came to beg for mercy, but no one from the third prince's mansion was seen. Father may not believe it. The reason why the Feng family was in trouble so quickly was entirely because of the third emperor's push behind the scenes, Chu Qinghuang said calmly. As for the reason, I guess it may have something to do with King Zhenbei. The emperor fell silent. A deep and unpredictable cold light flashed across his eyes, and he spoke calmly after a long time. You mean, Tianyan wants to abandon the Feng family and win over King Zhenbei instead? Thinking of Chu Tianyan's defense of King Zhenbei here just now, it seems that the two have indeed reached some kind of agreement. My son indeed thinks so, Chu Qinghuang said, but there is a sequence. He should first win over the king of Zhenbei and reach an agreement before he decides to abandon the Feng family. But what is the inevitable connection between him wooing the king of Zhenbei and betraying the Feng family? The emperor still couldn't understand. Even if the king of Zhenbei becomes his backing, there is no need for him to abandon the Feng family. After all, the Feng family is separated from him. The bones are connected with the tendons, so I can't figure out the reason for attacking my own uncle. If it was a forced abandonment, he could understand it, but Adai instigated Feng Wanyu to poison her, and then betrayed Feng Wanyu. This was obviously a deliberate attempt to kill the Feng family. What on earth is Chu Tianyan planning? Could it be to dispel his wariness? My son has been recuperating in the mansion for the past 2 days and has not gone to investigate the content of the agreement reached between the third emperor brother and the king of Zhenbei. If my father wants to know, it is better to let the shadow guards of the Dark Pavilion investigate. Chu Qinghuang, she frowned. Maybe I will be responsible for finding out the truth and then report it to my father. The emperor was silent for a while. In order to avoid suspicion, you should stay out of Tianyan's affairs, so as not to displease the Queen Mother again and accuse you of deliberately suppressing your brother. Qinghuang has offended too many people recently and cannot make too many enemies. He arranged for someone else to investigate the matter between Tianyan and King Zhenbei. Chu Qinghuang nodded. Qinghuang, the emperor said as if casually, during this period, many ministers have begun to make offers for me to establish him as the heir apparent. You have also seen Tianyan's virtues, and I have never considered him at all. Your fifth emperor brother has also, he is not a prince, and now only Tianling and Tiankuo can be considered. I want to hear your opinion. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment. Father, do you want to hear the truth? $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 240. His Majesty the Emperor's hand holding the teacup tightened slightly, and then he calmed down and said calmly, "Of course I listen to the truth. The eldest emperor brother is not the best candidate to be the crown prince." Chu Qinghuang obviously did not shy away from discussing these, and his tone was always calm. First, he does not have a strong backing and does not have the support of his mother's family. Second, he only blindly tolerated it, never took the initiative to plan, and had very little power at his disposal. Thirdly, he was not a king. Taking these 3 points together, if he became the crown prince, or even the emperor in the future, then his father would be in trouble during this period. All efforts to purge the court and rectify the rules of the court will be in vain. The king's power will be gradually emptied into a puppet, and the court will become the world of powerful officials from aristocratic families. The emperor's face changed slightly and he remained silent. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment, and then continued indifferently, "Although the second emperor brother has the support of the queen and the Qin family, he is currently the most qualified to be the crown prince, but the second emperor brother is mediocre in ability, does not have the courage to govern the country, and does not have the ability to follow the powerful officials of the family. The courage to fight did not make 11 Qi's troops stronger." The emperor said calmly, "So they are not suitable." "My father knows clearly whether they are suitable for each other," Chu Qinghuang said calmly. "If Ziki is already a strong and prosperous country, then the second emperor brother may be able to become a conservative emperor, but Ziki has internal and external troubles, and the economy we are not rich enough, and our troops are not strong enough to deal with the invasion of any country for the time being, so my father should be able to imagine what Ziki will face in the future if the second emperor brother takes the throne." The emperor said nothing, his expression was deep and unpredictable. After a long while, he said calmly, "So, 11 Qi's country is destined to have no successor." Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows. "Father, do you mean that I am not a human being?" The emperor looked at her silently, and Chu Qinghuang also looked at him. The father and daughter looked at each other as if they were playing a charade, and it was unclear whether they were testing or had other meanings in their eyes. "Qinghuang, are you willing to assist your imperial brother?" The emperor narrowed his eyes and said, "With your assistance, I believe that both Tianling and Tiankuo can be the emperor." Chu Qinghuang refused. "My son is not willing." "Why?" "It's better to help them sit on the throne than to sit on my own," Chu Qinghuang said calmly. "I have no interest in assisting an idiot to become the emperor. I have to obey their orders at all times, just in case those two idiots are afraid of me. My heart, maybe when someone is accused of having great achievements, he will try to get rid of me, but I can't do it." Her tone was too ordinary, even a little calm, as if Zhongshan Shiji was just a piece of clothing or a toy in her eyes. She could get it if she wanted it, it was no big deal. "It seems that it is just an ordinary fact that the king's fear is overshadowed by his high achievements, and there is nothing that cannot be mentioned." On the contrary, His Majesty the Emperor was surprised that she could speak so calmly and bluntly, without covering up anything in front of his father, as if she was not worried about causing his wrath. "Ziki has never had a female emperor in power for hundreds of years," he spoke in a deep tone, without distinguishing between joy and anger. "There has never been any princess, not even a prince, who would openly conceal her ambitions in front of the emperor. Qinghuang, you really impress me time and time again." Ambition. Chu Qinghuang frowned and thought for a while. I don't think this is ambition. What's that called? I just want to have a legitimate identity and position to do what I want to do. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, if these royal brothers are really talented in governing the country and ensuring peace, I will not risk the disapproval of the world. Wouldn't it be more comfortable to fight for this position, be a princess who goes her own way, raise a few beautiful faces, and stay in the mansion every day to enjoy flowers, drink tea, and play the piano and listen to music? The emperor took a sip of tea. However, if I don't do some things, Ziki may not be able to survive the abdication of his father, and he will have to let these fools destroy the country and destroy the territory, and the territory will not be preserved. The emperor's expression changed, bold. Chu Qinghuang looked at him silently. The emperor held the teacup in his hand and his eyes fell on the 9-branched white jade cup. His expression was indifferent, and the color of his eyes was unpredictable. He didn't know what he was thinking in his heart. Chu Qinghuang stood quietly aside, not in a hurry or uneasy at all. Rules that have been adhered to for thousands of years cannot be easily broken. Those who try to challenge the rules have to bear certain risks. External pressure only accounts for part of it, and more is to overcome their own psychological obstacles. At this time, the emperor was having a battle between heaven and man in his heart. The princess is the reserve. There was no room for consideration in this matter. Let alone ambition, anyone who dared to propose such ridiculous ideas or suggestions would be executed mercilessly. However, with the Queen of Dongling as a reference, the princess's ascension to the throne seemed to be something that could be considered. Although she would still face many obstacles, at least someone had proven the feasibility of such a thing. Especially during the reign of Queen Dongling, Dongling reached unprecedented prosperity, which seemed to give him an excellent reason to follow suit. The tea in the teacup had gone cold, but the emperor had no time to pay attention. After an unknown amount of time, he said calmly, "Do you know how absurd this idea is to the civil and military officials of the entire dynasty?" Chu Qinghuang nodded slowly, "It's conceivable. You should also know that if they know that you have such an idea or even plan to act on it, you will instantly become a public enemy. It's predictable. The Queen Mother, the Empress, all the concubines in the harem, your brothers, and all the civil and military officials will oppose you at all costs. They will unite to attack you and stop your ambition at all costs. Your son is mentally prepared. This road will be very difficult," the emperor said calmly. "The road to becoming an emperor is not as simple as confiscating the property of others just because you have evidence, and whipping people when you are angry. If you make enemies with all the noble families, you may not even sit on that chair before you sit on it. I am afraid that Father Chu Qinghuang interrupted him casually, "Your son is different from those idiots." The emperor felt like he had something stuck in his throat, and he didn't know how to react for a while. Although those sons were indeed a little stupid, they were still his sons after all. Qinghuang called them idiots and fools to belittle them, which made him, the emperor, feel really uncomfortable. Give some face to his brothers. After a long silence, the emperor wanted to say something, but realized that it seemed redundant to say anything at this moment. The tea was already cold. The emperor put the teacup aside and thought for a moment. "Qinghuang, I have a question that I hope you can answer truthfully." "Father, speak frankly. Is Chen Hai your man?" "Chen Hai?" Chu Qinghuang frowned, her expression clearly showing surprise. Why would father ask this? The emperor saw her expression and actually had an idea in his mind, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. In any case, it's hard not to feel uncomfortable when someone around you is bribed by someone else, even if this person is your own daughter. Fortunately, he was just being suspicious. So he shook his head. "Nothing, I just asked casually." Chu Qinghuang hummed, "Father, what do you think about what I just said? What will you do if I object?" "Nothing." Chu Qinghuang looked calm, "I will still do what I want to do." The emperor said, "Ziki has never had a female emperor ascend the throne. Everything has a first time, it depends on who has the courage to break the rules. If you want to be the first person, you will inevitably face many obstacles. You have already thought of these, and I won't say much." The emperor finally said what he cared about most: "If I agree to let you compete for the throne openly, what can you bring to Ziki in the future? What the father cares about is what the son can do." Chu Qinghuang said firmly, "The country is stable, the territory is intact, the economy is prosperous, and the army is strong. No one can do these things except her." The emperor's heart was throbbing. What Qinghuang said was exactly what he cared about. He had not been able to do it in all these years since he ascended the throne. Although there were various reasons, it was not all because of his incompetence, but he still felt regretful. If Qinghuang could really let go and see Ziki become strong and powerful, and its people prosperous and stable in his lifetime, then what would it matter if he broke the rules once? "I will not help you, and I will not favor you," the emperor said in advance. "You must fight for what you want." Chu Qinghuang sneered, "Don't worry, father, I don't need anyone's favoritism.